People have been using substances to provide mind-altering experiences since inhabiting the earth. As our state of mind changes, so does our movement behavior and expression. As we expand our movement repertoire, we can also shift how we think, feel, and behave. In fact, clinical psychologist Anat Ben-Yael, renowned for her work with children who have special needs, has discussed how research demonstrates that bringing attention to one's movement can create new neural pathways at dramatic rates. This is clearly evident when I lead dance movement therapy groups for adults who use alcohol and drugs in part to cope with symptoms of mental illness. For those who struggle with addiction, it can be scary to be asked to dance, move, and connect to their bodies, as they are more accustomed to coping with their feelings by numbing them with alcohol and drugs. It can also be especially vulnerable to be asked to move in relationship to another, because of the shame connected to substance use that people often experience. Many have had to create and live with secrets in order to best navigate throughout their days, while trying to hold on to what they have come to trust, need, and even love. Yet, people willingly participate in my dance movement therapy groups. I believe this is because of how I engage in the therapeutic movement relationship with them. Following the practice of Marian Chase, considered the founding mother of dance movement therapy, I greet each individual and welcome that person into the space and into relationship. I am aware of how I am communicating through my movement, while also trying on and reflecting back their movement. I pay particular attention to the stage of recovery that individuals are in, and I explore that stage with them through spontaneous, creative, and reciprocal movement. I recall how one individual reluctantly entered the group room, not wanting to make any changes in his life. I gently approached him and walked side by side with him, slowing down my movement to find a seat across the space. Another individual who is actively pursuing changes in his life energetically entered the group room and quickly and directly found a seat. I grew in my posture as I waved hello to him from across the space. When individuals feel seen and validated for who they are in the moment, they are more likely to engage in relationship with me, develop trust, and risk change. The structure of a dance movement therapy group, combined with the use of movement to organize the body, and the intentional, often subtle movement responses of the therapist, create an atmosphere of change versus one of survival and chaos. I recall how one individual, whom I'll refer to as Bob, shared how he wanted to stop using, but he always caved into peer pressure when his friends came over to his home. He demonstrated this through a role play when group members enacted knocking on his door, while he stood with such uncertainty, almost disappearing into himself, that the group easily gained entrance, neither being granted nor denied permission. It just happened. I then strategically invited another group member, John, who was further along in his recovery, to trade places with Bob. Before the group could even get to the door of John's home, he immediately made a beeline for the door of the actual group room. He exited the space and entered the hallway. We were all left completely stunned and were then able to discuss and try on the different movement qualities. I invited the group to shrink in their bodies, to sink in their posture with an overall sense of passiveness, to disconnect from their core and the ground, to avoid eye contact, and to restrict their breathing. I then invited them to directly locate a point in space and to walk towards it with swiftness and determination, feeling the length in their bodies and their feet push against the floor to propel them forward, all while activating their breath and their core to access greater flow of movement. We then transition between the two movement phrases, bringing attention to how the movement shifted and what was necessary to make that happen. Both Bob and John's movement reflected what they were experiencing internally. Bob shared how he felt almost paralyzed in response to peer pressure. These were the only friends that he had, and he did not want to lose them. And he also realized that his drug use was starting to cause more and more problems for him. he began to express interest in learning ways to cope with peer pressure. In response to this interest, John shared that how he tried to maintain his friendships with his using buddies while trying to work on his recovery, and recognized that the only thing that they had in common was their drug use, and they were not interested in him as a person. In order to maintain his recovery when confronted with peer pressure, he's had to immediately remove himself from such situations as quickly and directly as possible while staying focused on his goals. Whether it was ambivalence or determination as related to their recovery, both Bob and John were able to talk about the sensations, feelings, and thoughts that accompanied their movement behavior. They began to identify and access different movement qualities to best support their current stage of recovery. There is perhaps an irony in using movement to heal and change, given that the body is often experienced as a vulnerable landscape. Yet, movement can provide a sense of safety as words are not required. Those with addictions have difficulty expressing their feelings and emotions after years of using substances to numb how they're feeling. And using movement to identify, express, experience, and cope with their feelings can provide a sense of relief. Many often experience a great deal of shame in connection to their substance use, and movement can provide a sense of freedom as there is no right or wrong way to move, just as there is validity and meaning to an individual's substance use. Perhaps they use to keep safe, to cope with traumatic or abusive situations, or to manage overwhelming feelings of anxiety or depression. There is also validity to their movement, from the smallest breath or gesture to large, out-of-control, full-bodied expression. Each person's movement is honored. From this place of acceptance, understanding, and empathy, I witness individuals explore both their dance of addiction and their dance of recovery, integrating the strengths of each. As awareness of their body increases, so does their ability to listen to, understand, and respond to body signals with intention. This provides invaluable information, especially as related to cognitive, emotional, and behavioral triggers and coping mechanisms. Bob learned to recognize when he felt frozen by ambivalence and was able to access and increase his use of breath to enliven his body and provide movement options. This enabled him to respond to peer pressure in more active and constructive ways. Dancing and relationship can revitalize the spirit and provide new movement possibilities, empowering individuals to mourn their losses, reclaim who they are in the world, and find new hope in their journey of recovery.